Be respectful and ask like actual questions that go along with the content. Fantastic. If you can't, you can go in the hall and you can watch the video on your own time. Does everybody understand? Okay, frequency of an event. Yep. Yeah, go ahead. That's fine. Guys, you really should have your own color pencils at the beginning of the year. Everybody was supposed to have their own. Right? Mine, you guys also lost mine, so I don't have any to share. Go ahead. Frequency of an event is the number of times something happens. Okay, you guys started out in elementary school with frequencies where you're just doing like the tally marks, right? How often something happens. So these are kind of like that, only a little bit extra. Okay, so instead of having tallies, we're just given actual numbers. And we use those numbers to help us figure out what the missing totals could be, right? So we have this table here, and we're going to fill in the missing information based on what we know, right? So if I know that I have a total of 18 yeses, and I have 286 for this column's total, what does the no value need to be? How can I figure that out? What can I do there, Dylan?
You take 286 and subtract from 118.
Yep, and I would get 168. What?
My binder fell apart, and I accidentally put that paper in here somewhere.
Okay, come get a new one. All right, so then I'm going to work my way around this table, again, to fill in. You do not need to talk about what color pencils you're getting. Just get a color pencil and sit down.
Did they just steal the box?
So then you fill in the table based on the information you know and don't know. So if I have 64 yeses and 118 total, I can subtract those to find out how many were no's. So you take what you know, it's deductive reasoning, and you fill in the information. So go ahead and finish the rest of this table. Yes, you're going to need a calculator. Don't just sit there and wait for other people to fill it out for you. Yes?
How do you get 168? Did you just put that down?
Can somebody explain to Nate where we got 168 from?
286 minus 118.
Oh, no, what then?
As like they're all together. Two totals. The total of yeses.
So if I know that this total row is 168, I'm going to subtract 168 minus 93 to get this many no's. And then I can add these to get these column totals. So we filled in the missing values in red. So who can tell me how many people said yes to this answer and no to this answer? What should this missing space be? Grace? 75? So then the total for this column of no's should be 147. And the total for this column of yeses should be 139. Right? So we don't even know what they're asking yes or no to, but we can use the information and what we know about how columns and rows add up to fill in the missing values. So go ahead and do that for question 2 as well. Fill in the missing information. Go ahead and check your answers. Okay, so this is just a two-way frequency table, right? We have information going vertically, information going horizontally, and we're using that information to fill in the missing data. So then we're going to move on to three different kinds of frequency. Our first type of relative frequency is joint, okay? This is where it starts to get a little confusing. This is why we have color coding today, right? So we're going to use the two-way frequency table below to find the joint relative frequency of boys surveyed who like football, okay? So we're literally just trying to figure out of the boys, who likes football. So we're going to look at a couple things. We're going to look at the category divided by the total surveyed, right? Boys that prefer football, right, is what we're looking for. So this is joint relative frequency. This is orange. You've got to be kidding me, Vicki. I had it up there for how long? Come on. It's blue, red, yellow, orange.
Literally the primary colors matter.
Blue, red, yellow, orange. So we're going to take, and these fractions are our division problems, right? So you take the category, which is boys that prefer football, over however many people were surveyed. So how many boys preferred football, according to this frequency table? Cohen? So I'm going to color in this box that has the 24. And that's going to be my numerator here. And how many total people were surveyed? Total. Sebastian?
60.
60. So I'm going to have 24 over 60, which is 0.4, which is 40%. Right? So for joint relative frequency, we take the category, which was boys who prefer football, out of the total. Right? So if I asked you to find girls that prefer baseball, what would my fraction be? Mason?
60. Well, I was like, why would it be 24 over 60? Just boys.
Because you have to find it out of everybody surveyed, right? Total surveyed. So even though we're surveying boys and girls, I just want to know how many boys preferred football. So I could say 40% of everybody surveyed was a boy who prefers football, right? So like they only got to pick one, right? This adds up to 42. So they didn't get to pick more than one sport that they prefer, right? So let's try another example. We're finding joint relative frequency, and there's a reason that I'm highlighting all these because they all kind of sound the same. We have joint, marginal, and conditional relative frequency. So highlighting them helps us remember which one we're doing. We want to find the joint relative frequency of students who prefer oatmeal cookies and are female. Okay? So how many girls prefer oatmeal cookies? 10. Right? So my category is girls that prefer oatmeal cookies. I got that from up here. How many total people were surveyed? 100. So I'm coloring these in to draw my attention to what my fraction will be. So I get 0.1, which is 10%. Oops. So joint relative frequency is taking a very specific total, divide by the total. All right, marginal relative frequency. We're going to use blue for this. Jack and Zane. This is your final warning or you'll be in the hall. Okay, so this is different because before we were taking something from not one of the totals, right? We were taking something from inside without being a total column or row. Now we're going to be taking something from a total column or row and still dividing it by the total surveyed. So joint relative frequency of students surveyed who are male. So how many total male students were surveyed? 42. And you can see down here, total of row or column, male total, and then how many total were surveyed? 60. So my fraction is going to be 42 out of 60, which will be 0.7, which is 70%. How about the next one? And notice that I did not give you the actual what to put. I didn't give you the fraction lead up to this. Use a two-way frequency to find the marginal relative frequency. Of students who prefer sugar cookies. So what's going to be in my numerator here? Well, this is total who prefer, right? Out of the total surveyed. And so you guys said 35 because that is the total of this column. And we know that 100 were surveyed. What if I wanted to find out the marginal relative frequency of students who prefer oatmeal cookies? What would my fraction be? 15 over 100. How about marginal relative frequency of students who are female? 60 over 100, right? So again, this one is like a one little section. This one is a total compared to the total. And this last one, conditional relative frequency, this is where we have the yellow color pencils.
Yay.
Oh man, pencils are all breaking. Okay, this is the most complicated one, like, of the whole thing, okay? This is where it gets really, really, really confusing. Everybody's fine, and then we get to this and it's like, I have no idea what we just did, okay? So I want you guys to read this frequency. It says, find the conditional relative frequency that a student surveyed prefers baseball, given that the student is female. I want you all to underline, draw attention to the word given. Given that the student is female. That word given is really important. That tells us what our denominator value is going to be. Okay? So we want to know that a student surveyed prefers baseball. So how many students surveyed preferred baseball? 9. Right? Given that they are female. So how many total students are female?
Yeah, but
Okay, and the reason this gets confusing is because if you don't read the description carefully, maybe you would have flip-flopped these. And I I say maybe because that's the most missed question when we take this quiz, is that students don't look at which one is described as a given, and they just flip-flop them. Okay? Because if you had done girls that prefer, and then something about baseball, you would have got 9 out of 15. Maybe you would have had 18 out of not over 9, right? So you have to be really careful to pay attention to that word given. That is going to be your enemy when it comes to relative frequencies. Everything else is pretty straightforward except that. So let's go ahead and answer this next one. We're going to find the conditional relative frequency that a student surveyed is male, given that the student prefers chocolate chip cookies. Okay, so how many of the boys surveyed preferred chocolate chip cookies? 20. And then what is the given?
40. No, it's 50 because it's the total chocolate chips.
Total chocolate chip, right? Given that the student prefers chocolate chips. So the given is going to be the chocolate chip total, right? Just like up here, the given was that the student was female. Not that they prefer baseball, but that they were female. So it is going to be 20 out of 50. Questions, comments, concerns? Okay, we're going to stop that. We're going to stop the notes right here.